I mean, at the end of the day, I don't want to sound like I am anti-policy because obviously the country is built on the policies we put in place. But when I think about the Black spending power and the opportunities that that presents, I think about something that Luis, I think you actually brought it up in a former segment. Black people, I don't want to go too far left, but this is just really standing out. I don't get moved by a lot of the policy conversations because at the end of the day, we have an opportunity with a $1.7 trillion spending power to pull together if we can align on different initiatives at a community based level, if we strategically invest, if we form cooperatives, if we create opportunities. So I don't, for years, politicians have been promoting their policies to show us how, as Black people or for the people in general, we could benefit. But at the end of the day, I really think the solution lies at the community level. I mean, we could do some amazing things if we were to get in alignment, and I don't think we're there.
Well, I mean, it's kind of a bit of a far fetch. You want to go, Jay?
Just real quick, I want to
Go
respond.
ahead.
As far as what she said on the community level, that's absolutely correct. Think about if we how we gave our vote out. Imagine or didn't give our vote out. Imagine if we did that with our money. You understand? Like if we all collectively for 1 month said we're not spending money with these companies, that would hurt. That would hurt them. That would have them say, "What is going on here? What do you need? What can we do for you?" You understand? We can't do that.
Yeah.
Like we're not connected enough. With any other ethnicity, they can, you know, Chinese delegation call, you know what? We're not spending with this company, and they will do that, go on a strike, and these people would be like, okay, we're going to have a meeting, what do you need? Like you said, on the community level, we need to do that because we just give money to people who continuously oppress us, continuously give us their ass to kiss. I don't understand why we can't do that, but somebody needs to come along, or it needs to start somewhere where we control who we're spending our money with collectively,
And
because
Jay,
Uh,
you gave the example. You said Chinese people. I mean, think about Chinatown in different cities. You know, I'm in Chicago. When you go in Chinatown, they have their own schools. They have their own everything. I mean, that's a blueprint right there. We don't even hear about them in the media here. You turn on the news, you never hear about Chinatown ever. So I think that again, I'm not anti-policy because policies get things going and they enforce legislation and everything else. But I just feel like we have a lot more work to do before we get all like revved up about policies. We need to look at our communities and start there. And then we can start talking about legislation and everything else because we're too divided as a people to really see a true change.
Brittany, I know you talked about division, and we often hear this, and even in the comments, I'm seeing it. But do women think that all men that voted for Trump hate women? Like, is this? I mean, this is a something that's being pushed that if you voted for Trump, you must hate women.
I standing on what I said earlier because the numbers don't lie. The numbers show that was particularly with Black men, they showed up to the polls. I think it goes back to the dialogue that a lot of us were hearing. And every circle that I'm in, when we got into these political debates, all you heard was the men were just bashing women. I'm not voting for Kamala. Look at what she did to Black men. You know what I mean? So I don't know if it is necessarily women are focused on the numbers or not. I think they're focused on those backroom conversations that were happening. And there were a lot of those conversations happening. Men just, were expressing disdain for Black women. And I think that's where the emotions were coming from, because obviously I think all of the people can see that Black men did show up and vote. They voted for Kamala. But I think it was
Okay,
those
tell me what was
conversations
being said
happening.
in those conversations. Can you tell me exactly what was being said in those conversations?
I mean, let's use this panel, for example. You
No,
know, there were
I'm
plenty of times.
talking about the conversations that you were having.
It reflected exactly what was happening on this panel, where you all were expressing how Kamala doesn't care about Black men, so we don't care about putting her in office. And then, you know, you guys were standing on Trump's policies to bring more jobs back to America. You guys were really policy focused in those conversations. But
And hold on, real quick, Brittany. I want to start there because this is how we got to open this up a little bit, right? So you said that they didn't want to vote for Kamala because she didn't like she didn't do anything for Black men, so we're not going to vote for her. Why do you think they said that?
Well, going back to the when she was, what was it, when she was putting young Black men in jail, when she you know, I guess people would look at that as her contributing to mass incarceration, which is a form of systemic, you know, racism. So at the end of the day, that affects, you know, Black people as a whole. So I think it boiled down to economic issues, because when you look at mass incarceration, and that affects the Black dollar, that affects the Black family. So I think they were looking at it from a standpoint that Kamala isn't, you know, for the Black people because of how she treated young Black men.
Okay, now do you think that that's fair to say?
I think that she didn't create the laws. She did not create the laws. She had a right to enforce what was already established. So you can't put all of that on her. And I think somebody said it earlier, people always want to point the finger. I think Black men jumped on that bandwagon with that, you know, rhetoric to point the finger at her. But it's like, what is the real issue? Because when you think about it, at the end of the day, she didn't create the laws, but she did have a right to uphold the laws. You know what I mean? It's so I understand how Black men would feel a certain type of way about that. And Kamala even did come out and express some regret on some of the things that happened when she was in that position. So I mean, I get it. I get how they would feel a certain way, but when you look at it from a deeper perspective, the issue goes back way further than what Kamala did.
Okay,
And
so hold on. So if you think that there's something wrong with that picture and you can understand where they're coming from, then why label them as not liking Black women? You know, why not leave it there and say, okay, I get where you're coming from, and then have further discussion instead of putting them in the box?
I mean, so that was one part of the dialogue. You also had men who were out there saying, I'm not voting for a woman. A woman can't run this country. So you're right. When it comes to that particular situation, yes, you should not label it as, you know, Black men don't like Black women just because of that. But at the end of the day, I was at the polls and there were literally Black men saying out loud that I'm not voting for no Black woman, let alone a woman, period. So I think that, again, I don't think the women were really paying attention to the numbers. I think they were just being moved by the dialogue. Like the conversations were not uplifting at all, you know, when it comes to Black women. So it did create, you know, just it affected the morale. It definitely affected the morale. It wasn't a positively driven conversation. And I'm not trying to poke at Hink, but I mean, Hink is a good example. Like he goes in on Black women all the time, especially on these panels. And that was what we were hearing in a lot of these backroom conversations.